Hello, Bryony. And here we are thinking about, well, I think this is my favorite component. We're thinking about equality. What's your freshest thinking about equality?
So, equality, interestingly, it's one that I totally get it, but I just don't do a lot more thinking about it, or I haven't. I have in the back of my head, but putting it into words, I haven't really expressed the deeper stuff about equality. So I haven't. It hasn't always been my go-to component, but I have to say the focus on it this month. I'm like, oh, you know what? It's becoming one of my favorite components. Um, so the short definition is regarding each other as thinking peers, giving equal time to think. And there's a sort of little bit of extra, which is about, people in a hierarchy can still be thinkers. Everyone's valued equally as a thinker. Everyone gets their turn, their time and attention. And, a bit about how that helps people who normally speak less to speak maybe more, and those who speak more to speak less. But it just seems like scratching the surface, actually, because those things in themselves seem very simple, but actually what they're asking of us is much, much bigger. And it is that, and attention, I think, are the sort of real framers. If you did nothing else to start with, these are the real boundary setters. I'm going to stop there and yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I've never thought of it that way before, but I think you're right. Equality and attention are the big hitters. And then appreciation is the easy thing to do that makes a deep difference. So, second rung sort of thing. There's a lot of splitting of hairs around the word equality, particularly in public service, which is where I've spent absolutely the most of my career. And I can already hear the word equity like rumbling around my head, because actually, when we talk about having equal time to think, what we're saying is that everybody has an equitable time to think. Because, for example, in a round, we don't infantilize people by giving them a minute each. We ask people to regulate themselves around bringing the round in within the 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it is that we've set for it. And some people will talk longer than others because they have more to say. And so there's something equitable about that. And there's something self-responsible that brings agency to it, which I think is really powerful. Obviously, in a pair, it's a bit different. We say 5 minutes each or 10 minutes each or whatever. But pairs are very much nursery slopes for me. It's often the place that we start people, after we've done a round, isn't it? So it's an equitable practice. And that for me has got deep roots in social justice. And as a public servant, the component of equality, which I re-encountered in 2009, having done my initial training before the components were really, they were there, but really used and operationalized, it really helped me break equality and diversity, which was being used as all one word, like a tick box, a thing to be held accountable for, but not really to do. And these days in public service, people often say EDI. They mean the same thing. It's an acronym that becomes meaningless, and it's the most important thing in the world. And I read something recently on social media where someone said EDI work is about making white people feel better about injustice. And it just went off, and I think, wow, there's a lot of truth in that. And there's a lot of well-meaning, good intentions around equality. And what I love about it here as one of those big hitters of the 10 components is it really does some work. We put equality to work in the thinking environment in really practical ways. And that's why that's what draws me and keeps me in this practice, I think. What do you think?
I think there's that deep I say deep, it's many layers of limiting, untrue and limiting assumptions that we've all gathered over our whole lives, all of us, in different ways. And so the deepness of it is that we're all required to recognize our own assumptions, and that is hard to do. And it's interesting that I completely hear you when we say we're not going to infantilize people with the timings, but I think we have such deeply ingrained patterns that when we first come to this work, I am absolute time. I don't know what the word is. I want everyone to really observe time, this equality of time, because it's so easy for one reason or another for us to believe that actually what I'm saying is more important. And I could take 1 minute 30 and then leave you with 30. I feel like it's easy to do that with all the best intentions without really realizing. And I feel like it is, of all of it, is, well, I say attention as well, but it's a real discipline because of all the stuff that we bring with us. And we need to have that boundary so clearly at the beginning of all of this, because it's really important. It is absolutely, let's just get used to the fact that I've got exactly as much time as you have. No one has more or less, because that's what this is about. We have to be accepted, know that we're accepted, know that we have as much value as anybody else in this space. So yeah, I'm real rigorous, that's the word, really rigorous with time at the start. And not just because of that, which is huge. No, I'm going to stop there. What do you think?
That equitable sharing of time, you're right. We don't infantilize, but a time may come when we need to. So we have the spectrum of independence, don't we, to really guide us in our teaching around that. So the first time that people are introduced to a round and the concept of, well, perhaps not the first time they're introduced to a round, but, you know, working with people around the concept of sharing the time equitably, if we see that ain't working, you have to roll with it. But then the next time you're saying, right, we're moving you a little bit further away from the independent. You're not quite ready. So let's try that again. And this time I'm going to raise my hand after a minute. And we hope not to have to do that, but sometimes we just do, because the practice of sharing time, it's not just the sharing of time, Bri, it's the being aware of time. There's something I notice when you offer people the gift of generative attention, that they believe it releases them from the self-responsibility of keeping an eye on time for themselves. Why would it? Because that is a normal responsibility. And in normal working lives, I bet most people could tell you what time it is broadly if they were asked, because we're like bang, 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 bang. But then you get into this generative attention space and suddenly, you know, oh, it's all mine. So it is really tough. It is countercultural. I think there's, I notice when I'm facilitating, particularly, you know, I regularly facilitate the ideas room. If for whatever reason I forget to say the word succinct in the setup, in terms of asking people to notice the time, and maybe that's a note for myself when I'm explaining succinct, to be more explicit about saying, so what I'm asking you to do is notice the time that you're taking. But when I forget to say that word, people bang on, even if they don't normally bang on. There's something now in that, the culture of that ideas room, which is saying the word it must go into some sort of neural pathway that makes people more mindful. Interesting. Yeah, what do you think?
Time. When I'm teaching, often we talk about the impact of time on our thinking, and it pretty much always comes up at some point because you have different amounts of time to think in. You know, in a round you might have a minute, in a pair you might have 5 or 10, or whatever it is. But what's the impact of having that time? The equality of time means that we've all got the same amount of time to think when we're together. It also means that we know that we've only got because we've only got a certain amount of time, it does help us to focus our thoughts. If I've only got a minute, then I've got to perhaps spend a bit of time just kind of going, oh, what do I think? Right, this is what I think, because my mind's sped away in the background, sort of coming out with what. Yeah, so that succinctness comes from knowing that I've only got a minute, or I've got 5 minutes, so I could expand my thinking a bit more, and then, oh yeah, maybe I do need a reminder. We choose the times, so who keeps the time, even in pairs, certainly. So yeah, there's something about the time and what that time feels like. A minute can be huge because we've adjusted ourselves to, I've got 1 minute, we've all got 1 minute. So yeah, as we get more practiced at it, we kind of know how much thinking we can do in that time, and actually make the most of the time that we've got. So that's quite an interesting one about that. Nobody's got power over anyone else. We've all got the same amount of time to think. And of course, the big thing is that we don't have to have finished our thinking in that time either. But yeah, it kind of runs into all sorts of other things for me, because the time boundary has so many other implications than just the equality. The other thing that underlies it all for me, which I talked about in the blog, was this concept of the positive philosophical choice, those generous assumptions that we make, and the part that plays in how we embody this equality, how we have an understanding of that people can work it out, and that we've got these assumptions that we have to sort of try and put aside so that we can fully give our attention. A whole nother thing. What do you think?
Yeah, I love how you've connected there. You brought it from the back of my brain to the front. You've connected positive philosophical choice with generous assumptions, which I study in Brene Brown's work as well. So just an appreciation for helping those two halves of the egg come together in my head, which of course I know, but don't know that, deeper thinking stuff. I am thinking about the first part of that definition, which is about coming together as thinking peers. And it was another real mic drop moment for me in exploring the components when I went back to complete my thinking environment training. That we can be equal as thinkers, where role and rank are left at the door. And in public service in particular, it's so hierarchical. And I've worked, of course, for the NHS as well as in education, that there is no thinking peer stuff going on in standard meetings. It's very unusual. Rank is always there. And when I say role and rank, I really mean rank. I just wanted to stop people coming to the ideas room and saying, oh, I'm head of department, or even worse, I'm a HOD or HOF, head of faculty. Who wants to describe themselves as a HOD? But, come in and play in the rank, and then everybody else goes. And one of the most lovely moments over the past few years of ideas rooms has been where you know, a very, very, very senior person came along to an ideas room, someone who is recognized nationally as like, you know, the person in FE, and introduced themselves by their first name. And afterwards emailed me and said it was absolutely beautiful to be in a space where I wasn't my job. And Amber Franklin did some research into the ideas room for her dissertation. And she found that sentiment echoed, that the principle of role and rank being left at the door. I do say role, rank and ego, but ego's a lot harder. But the principle of rank, in fact, being left at the door actually seems to come as such a relief to people higher up the food chain, as much as it does to anyone else. And that's been really beautiful, because that sets up positive philosophical choice. I think it sets up the opportunity to make generous assumptions about another human being when you're listening to them, because you're not caught up in like the industrial relations of British Leyland 1973, thinking, oh, well, I'm only a, or, ooh, look at me. Yeah, equalist thinkers, I love that. What do you think?
That really reminds me of having this idea of, you know, you turn up, say it's a meeting, and you turn up, and I'm the person who's, you know, head of department, and so this is what we're going to think about, and this is what I think, and who, off we go. Actually, no, that's the other big thing that brings this, that is the leveler in those rounds. Who would like to go first? I'm not going to go first. I'm not going to tell you what I think and you all jump to what I think, or, you know, I must know best because I'm head of department. No. Who would like to go first? And then we'll follow the round from there. It's a huge leveler, and it's a huge, as you said, a weight of responsibility lifted. This is often the case in the thinking environment, though, because we're only responsible for our own thinking in that time, aren't we? And yeah, handing over to all of the people in a team, it takes the weight off. We're all in it together, is the point, isn't it? It's much more uniting of a team to invite everyone in, actually, to treat them as thinking peers. So there's so many deeper messages in this. That the word is meta, isn't it? Like there are just other layers that those words regarding each other as thinking peers, giving equal time to think, is just, yeah, there's so much weight to it when you think about it a little bit more. Of those other messages that are in there. Everyone is valued. Everyone's thinking is valued and respected and listened, heard. Yeah. What do you think?
Well, I think we could talk forever, and we've probably talked too much. Well, not too much, but we shouldn't bang on much more. But I can't leave this dialogue without saying the word power, because the word equality and the word power can never be separated. And that, for me, is the true joy and beauty of a thinking environment. In all of these years, I've seen it being sabotaged, don't get me wrong. So somebody comes crashing into the room with the role, rank and ego, throwing the power around. Sometimes it's hard to get beyond that. I have asked people to leave. And I could mute them. I could put them in the waiting room, but you can't subvert it. You can't. The thinking environment makes those power games transparent. So you can't stop people playing the games, but they are exposed. So when somebody is told that a principle is to leave your rank at the door, and they say, I'm head of department, watching everybody else on mute going is just lovely, because the person will see that as well. They've been asked not to do something. They've done the thing. What's that about? It's about bringing your power into the room. So I think there's so much more we could say about power, but I am really happy to leave it there. This has been a fabulous dialogue. Thank you, Bri.
I'm going to say one more thing. Those people that come with power, my generous assumption is that they're going to work that through. So, yeah.
I absolutely agree. It's the ones who, because of their power, don't come into the room that we need to worry about. Great. Is there anything more that you think, feel, or want to say?
No, just that I really love equality now.
Me too. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thank you.